Like there's people say that Arnold Schwarzenegger could have easily lost his accent if he put the time in, but instead he was like he knew it was his brand, so he kept on, being the guy we know.
All right, everybody, chill.
Yeah.
The best of the best.
Big fan.
It does look like my levels are much lower than your guys's. Let me crank up my gain a little bit.
By the way, guys, welcome to the newest episode of Loose Cannon, where we talk about our audio levels for 45 minutes.
That's most of the podcasts I listen to, man.
Yeah. It was like I feel like Chappelle or someone's done like a sketch about like hip hop artists in the recording studio where the whole time
turn the
they're
headphones
talking about like turn the headphones up, like just
turn the headphones
change the levels, change the levels.
Well, we're live.
Indeed.
On the streams.
We're on the streams.
All right, are we good to like start a podcast?
I suppose. I do like Patrick's idea though of a Seinfeld 2020 episode where they're trying to figure out which HBO do I get? I got one HBO that came with cable. Got the other one that's not.
You need Max, Jerry. You need Max. Who's Max?
Man, unfortunately, they could never reboot Jerry Seinfeld because of Michael Richards.
Oh, yeah.
He's like forever banned. I think forever canceled.
You think
probably.
still? Even now?
Yeah, I don't think so. People are still that upset about it.
I feel like there's
he
also
did the whole apology to her.
All it would take is them saying we're rebooting something with Michael Richards in it for it to be like, really, guys, in 2020.
Well, I would say that there's like a brand of comedian now that is more popular almost in like a spiteful way, where it's like, oh, the PC community tried to shut him down, and now he's back and uncensored and rough.
Yeah.
Can these SJWs take it?
And then Michael Richards comes out and that's totally not his brand. He's like, COVID is fake.
Well, did you see when he was on Comedians in Cars Getting Coffee with Jerry Seinfeld?
No.
Not seen that one.
Okay, it's pretty interesting. They talk about they bring it up. They bring up the elephant in the room. So I would recommend watching it.
I suppose if Louis C.K. can get his career back up, I guess relatively, I think Michael Richards deserves something.
Has he gotten his career back up though? Like I feel like he still
can't
be mentioned.
Didn't he do
in the
some
press.
shows?
I mean, just because he's done shows, though, doesn't necessarily mean that he's like Mel Gibson still gets work, but he's not like Mel Gibson anymore,
Yeah, but still, like the whole point was like I never want to hear from just Louis C.K. again, and here he is doing shows, and he probably gets the subversive crowd too, like you said, the people that want to. I don't want to get cucked by the media. I want to see the guy. Right? I want to see the guy that touched himself in front of ladies.
Yeah.
I'm gonna throw down a yes because I feel like we're going down a weird road here. We're
on our way to getting canceled.
Yeah.
Yes.
Star Wars. We are back for another episode of Loose Cannon, talking about what if blank made a Star Wars. But before we get to that, I am, of course, Alex Lowe.
And I'm Nick Oswald. We'll get that through.
Yeah, we'll figure it out one of these years. Guys, I'm Patrick Ebersol. How's it going?
Hey, and I'm producer Chris.
You know what? I think I'm going to make a flow chart, and it's going to be whoever kicks it off. If Alex, then Nick. If Patrick, then Alex. And then we'll follow the full flow chart. It'll be interactive. I'll give you guys an app or something.
You have to have a visual reference to.
Yeah, I'll make an app, and it's like, all right, guys, you have the order going. Okay, I'm starting, and then you hit Nick, and then it goes Patrick, and then it goes But Chris is always last.
Perfect. Yeah,
it's easy for me. I'm in.
So, sure to some of our listeners who have been bravely following us through this madness of a show that we create, we came up with this concept of a little spin-off show of what if blank made a Star Wars. And despite what you might have heard earlier in the episode, we're not necessarily focusing on if Louis C.K. made a Star Wars. We're focusing on.
I do not want to see that.
What if Jerry Seinfeld made a Star Wars?
Michael Richards made a Star Wars. No, instead
of Jerry Stiller made a Star Wars.
What's with hyperspace?
We are generally focusing on pretty iconic creatives in the film space, no pun intended, that have a very distinct style to them. So previously we've done, Wes Anderson and that dude to what if he made a Star Wars. this week, because I am a little messed up in the head, I wanted to explore what if David Fincher made a Star Wars. Now, David Fincher, you've likely seen at least one of his movies because he makes a lot of good movie films. His first big one was actually Alien 3. Not a great movie, not very well liked in the community. But shortly after, he made Seven, also known as the What's in the Box movie. Then after that, he made a movie called The Game, which is actually very good.
He made a movie. He made a game called The Movie.
He made a
video game. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was actually a cross-promotional deal. After that, he did Fight Club, which you should know about Fight Club, especially if you're a mid 20-something, late 20-something male. And then after that, Panic Room, not a great one, not super into that. And then I believe it was Social Network, then Benjamin Buttons, and then Gone Girl. That's all the David Finchers, and also Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. That's the David Finchers. So I guess I'll give a little bit of a rundown of David Fincher to give you guys an idea of the sort of flavor that might be coming your way. I'm gonna pull up my Google Doc here.
Is it time?
Go ahead and give me some mood music if you could,
Okay,
Nick.
sure. This one takes some getting into. So.
Oh yeah, we're all getting into a cold bath here. Who is David Fincher? Well, an iconic quote that he gave that really sums up all of his movies it's a quote, "I think people are perfect." I've maintained that. That's the foundation of my career. So, for all the movies he's made, Fight Club, The Social Network, House of Cards, Seven, they're all about kind of screwed up people with some kind of gross, sexy vibes to them. So that's going to be injected into this movie that I'm going to be pitching here in a Star Wars sense. By the way, Nick, could you turn it down just a little bit? The sexy vibes are a little strong in my ears.
Just a little too sexy?
A little too strong in the sexiness.
All right.
That's a good level there. Cool. So in terms of tropes of his movies, moral ambiguity is a big sense to it. So almost every single one of those movies that you see, it's going to be filled with characters that aren't necessarily good or bad. Everyone operates on a level of gray. So even the protagonists, the supposed heroes of the stories, are usually pretty screwed up people who have pretty big faults to them. Whether it's the narrator from Fight Club or, Mark Zuckerberg from The Social Network, they're all kind of screwed up in their own ways. And they usually don't have the happiest of endings a lot of the time. They're not the sort of movies where you walk away from it feeling like refreshed. So generally, they're all cynical, noir-tinged movies that kind of harken back to those olden times of dark color palettes and angsty characters that are moving through crime-ridden streets with disgusting, screwed-up people. So much like the movie Alien 3. So that's David Fincher. Any questions from you guys so far about who David Fincher is, or any favorite movies you guys have of Davies?
Well, go ahead. Oh wow,
we need our flow chart. Ooh.
Yeah.
I'll start. David Fincher is an all-time favorite of mine. Love Fight Club, and not for the cliche late 20s male reasons. I just think it's a really good movie. The Game blew my mind the first time I saw it, but The Social Network is unendingly rewatchable for me. That's one of my all-time favorite movies, and one of the greatest crimes in modern cinema, I think, is that The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo was the only one of those movies he got to make, because I would have loved to see the rest of that trilogy.
Yeah.
So all of them.
So I'm gonna go out on a limb here and say it's okay to like Fight Club. I think the Joker has replaced Tyler Durden in popular culture. So the Joker is the one that's passe, and that's the one that's that, like I said in our Christopher Nolan episode, he ushered in the 2010s. Well, Tyler Durden was Jack's smiling pancreas or whatever it was. He was the one that everybody was writing in their notebooks in high school, because that was a little bit in early internet. But I want to say this: I give you permission to like Fight Club again, because it's going to come back, and it's going to come back in a huge way. That was the movie that I watched to prepare for this, and that actually watched it this morning, which is a fun entrance to your day of a long day of working remote at your desk job was just thinking about anti-consumerism all day and just the utter meaninglessness of life. And then also mildly coming up with the same psychoses that Ed Norton gets in this movie too. I thought I was sick after watching the movie, and I think that says something about Fincher.
Yeah, not necessarily feel good movies. Chris?
My favorite is The Social Network. That movie just has the coolest vibe. I don't know like what it is about it, but it's just that dark sense of dread and something that we kind of have all grown accustomed to. That with the brand of Facebook, I feel like they just gave it such a very, I don't know, they made something that's like kind of had this background in our life that we don't really think about too much, like very, I don't know, very interesting and very creepy, kind of weird. So definitely made an impact on me when I saw it for the first time.
Yeah, his movies all tend to have somewhat of like an unnerving or ominous tone to them. I think one in part to just the really dark color palette he always uses, and then secondly, especially recently, he's palling up with Trent Reznor and making the soundtrack to all of his movies, which creates a really cool vibe. Some of the songs that I'll be using in my treatment here come from the Gone Girl movie, which, fun fact about him is he, when coming up with the soundtrack for that movie and telling Trent Reznor what he wanted, he told him about a story of how he went to a spa where they were playing this music in the spa that was supposed to be relaxing to him, but it just made him feel like really uncomfortable and nervous. And so all of the music from that movie has this on the surface, this vibe of everything being nice and relaxing and pleasant, but like there's something unnerving to it, which makes you listen to it a little differently your second time through. So he likes making people uncomfortable, and he likes making people think that like everybody's screwed up. And everyone in his movies generally are obsessives too, whether it's Zodiac or Seven or The Social Network. There's people who are just like focusing on something and can't like let go of it. So he also did the Netflix series House of Cards, another cheery thing to watch.
Oh yeah.
As well as Mindhunter. So a real fun road we're going to be going down tonight, boys.
So we want to thank Fincher for extracting enough Kevin Spacey out before we couldn't get anything more out of him.
Yeah,
two of his greatest roles, House of Cards and Seven.
And Seven being just a little taste of the Spacey.
Just an amuse-bouche of Spacey, if you will.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, with that, guys.
Well, Patrick, I have a request for you.
Oh, please.
I want you to hit me as hard as you can.
I mean, with your treatment.
Is that from the Joker? Is that the Joker movie?
That's from Fight Club.
I know. It's okay.
Hit me! That's from Joker. That's from Dark Knight.
Great. I get them mixed up, but very good pull there, Nick. So yes, I would like to hit you with my treatment. So if you could cue me up with some of the tunes,
yep.
The vibe tunes. Oh, nice. So this is my treatment for the David Fincher Star Wars film, Shadows of the Senate. This is going to be mainly inspired by his creations, House of Cards, Seven, and Zodiac. In terms of time frame, it's going to be leading into Revenge of the Sith. So almost kind of like where we saw Clone Wars wrapping up just recently, right up until Order 66, kind of in that verge there. My goal here is that it'll strengthen both Revenge of the Sith and actually, hopefully, Rise of Skywalker with some of the gaps that I saw there. So jump into it.
Here.
Yeah, very ambitious. Main protagonist here is I tried to come up with a good Star Wars name. Dran Sitton.
You made that up? I thought that was from Wikipedia. Very good.
That's a good compliment. Thank you.
Yeah.
He's a Senate page for Senator Amidala. So he's in the Senate all the time, seeing a lot of the senators coming and going. It's kind of our eyes on the ground, seeing things from that perspective. He grew up in 1313 in the slums of Coruscant and has made his way into the Senate. So he knows both the dark underworld of Coruscant, and now he's seeing the machinations of the elite ruling class of Coruscant, and I guess to an extent the galaxy, right? He sees Palpatine's lobbying and manipulation, and how Palpatine's able to make friends with everybody there and kind of bend them to his will in his own way. But at this point, he doesn't necessarily see it as like an evil influence, but just as a really charismatic guy, right? And we see more of his interactions with Amidala and Anakin through Dran's eyes as well. So kind of a cool background to any fans. They'd be excited because they can see maybe Anakin in the side view or in the periphery all the time, knowing kind of what's happening on the side through this random bodyguard to Padme showing up, right? The second main character, our second protagonist, is a woman named Tress Sott. She's a Coruscant security investigator, basically the police force of Coruscant. And she's actually investigating a series of ritualistic murders that are taking place throughout Coruscant. Each one has been a galactic senator, ritualistically killed by their limbs being pinned by old-looking daggers with mysterious writing carved into the victims' faces. So
this has got some True Detective going on.
Yeah.
Also, this puts our Duel of the Fates episode to the test because this sounds like an R-rated movie already.
Yeah. It's not going to be a PG film.
Just so everyone at home knows, Al shook his head hard.
Very anti-R-rated Star Wars. If you want to know why, go back
no green light here.
Duel of the Fates episode.
Oh well, too bad. I'm coming in guns blazing. Nick, could you cue me up with the next tune?
Absolutely. Adding some suspense to the day here.
Yeah, we got to get some tension going. Great. So women of 1313 have been disappearing. Some have been spotted in the back of senators' transport vehicles, and people are obviously assuming, oh, these women are being, shuttled around for illicit purposes. So Dran has been digging deeper into the machinations of the Senate, kind of trying to get an understanding of what things are going on here. He's seen some of these women in his day-to-day being hidden around through, back corridors of the Senate building. And he's come across a cult that's been developing within the inner society of the Senate. People meeting in seemingly black robes, praying in allegiance to what he's seen as a golden lightsaber. He's come across Tress in his day-to-day through seeing these suspicious figures in the Senate. And Tress has realized that there's likely a connection between the murders and this mysterious Senate cult. Obviously, with the through line being these women that's being brought from place to place. So Tress actually goes to question the Jedi Council about what's going on because there's a lightsaber here, right? When you think of a lightsaber, you think of the Jedi. And the Jedi are thought of as this mysterious force through the galaxy, right? Obviously, people think about them as enforcers, but when it comes to the real insight to what's going on there, a lot of people don't know what happens when children just disappear within the Jedi Temple, right? At that point, you don't ask questions. You just, know that these people are the enforcers of the galaxy. So don't ask about it. So she goes to the Jedi Council, bringing them some of the, pictures or holocrons of these victims' faces and the text that's carved in. And they warn her and say that you need to stop asking questions about this. It's dangerous and you have to stay away from this investigation. Stop it. And they're not going to involve themselves. She's asked them for help, but they say that their focus is on galactic matters, not city-level crime. So she leaves, obviously pissed off and feeling like these elite bodyguards that are clearly just warriors for show aren't going to do anything of any real meaning in this city. And our guy, one of our big fans of the Jedi here, Plo Koon, approaches Tress outside of the temple to tell her, listen, I know I can't do too much here, but that language, it's called Sith. Now, I don't know if people realize this, but we all think about Sith, right? We hear Sith, we know that it's like a common word in the Star Wars lore, but if you think about the Coruscant people at that time, or just general people at that time, anybody outside of the Jedi don't really know what Sith is, right?
Or if they did, they believed they didn't exist anymore.
Exactly. It's just like a ghost story, essentially.
It's like how Han's attitude towards the Force.
Yeah, it's mumbo jumbo. It's probably like a scary story that people would tell their kids to behave, right? So he tells her that this is Sith language, and he says that she should tread carefully because it's real and it's something that's it's a huge threat. So he says he's being called to a remote station, and that he'll aid her investigation upon return, like informally, obviously, not letting the Jedi Council know. So Tress then goes back to Dran to tell him about the information she received from Plo, telling him that this is a serious, matter, something really ominous at foot here. Dran confers with Padme to tell her he's heard whispers of Sith influence throughout the Senate. Padme is shocked, and she tells Dran that she knows somebody that actually has some knowledge of the Sith. None other than our boy, Sheev Palpatine, right? Dran goes to meet with Palpatine to ask questions, and at that point, it fades to black. We don't see any more from Dran. Nick, can you cue me up with some more hot tunes?
Coming right up.
Great. You can tell there's going to be some happy scenes based off of this music.
Well, and the plot up to this point really seems like a ball of joy.
It's going to take a turn. So Plo leaves Tress a message before leaving for his remote station, and Tress goes to Dran's office to tell him of the urgent info from Plo. She finds Dran murdered, pinned to the ground, face carved with more text. Black hooded figures appear behind her, and the scene cuts away. We cut back to the next scene, seeing her awaken. She's being held down to the ground by an invisible force. She's surrounded by these black hooded figures, and they part for Palpatine to emerge. He looks down at her, and this is when Sheev gives us all the exposition we've been waiting for. So these black hooded figures have been working obviously on behalf of Palpatine. They've been cleansing the Senate of any politicians who may not support his rise to power, as he believes the Empire is about to form soon, right? He's been just lining up all the pawns on the chessboard right before Order 66, so that as soon as this all comes to play, they'll vote him into power and he'll be the strong emperor that we know that he becomes, right? So any of these idealistic politicians who actually want to do good for the people of the galaxy, that ask questions, that hold truth to power, he's got to do away with them. So they've been murdered systematically over the last few years, right? And they've been taking these women, not for Palpatine to necessarily, I don't know, have a good time with, but to create his next of kin. He's trying to ensure his reign will continue for centuries, which my hope here with this is between these black hooded figures and between this idea of him trying to create his kin, we'll patch up a little bit more of what happened in Rise of Skywalker. All those, groups of black hooded figures on that mysterious planet, that's the cult that he had been creating so long ago in the Senate, and what they'd formed into, over the course of however many years between then and Rise of Skywalker. And I mean, it's not a huge patch, but at least we know like Palpatine's trying to get busy with some ladies, even if they're women that are abducted and just used for him, right? Anyways, Tress gets killed, and credits. So
there's been so much back and forth over whether or not Palpatine does indeed, and this confirms that he does.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's using street women from 1313 for his fun times.
Yep.
So anyways, that's my story. That's my pitch. Now at this point, I'm trying to remember from last time, Nick, if at this point I requested approval or if I give some more of the deets of the mechanics here.
I think we just go into the approval first, because then we'll talk about the mechanics, because we're going to go make this movie.
Okay, great, guys. So thank you. I leave my fate in your hands.
This is where I was like, oh, we'll talk to our people and our people will get back to you.
Yeah. Can you give us the names of the characters again, just so I'm keeping everyone straight?
So the Senate guy is named Dran Seton.
Dran Seton.
Mm-hmm. And the Coruscant investigator is Tress Sott.
Tress.
And then Sott, S-O-T-T. And then obviously
both of which I thought were real, by the way.
Yeah. We also have Anakin Skywalker showing up in little like cameos, as well as
Anakin
Padme.
Who?
Skywalker. Yeah.
Okay. Now, which one of the characters is the one wearing the hoodie and the "fuck you" flip flops?
Probably be more likely to be Dran, as being a young male on Coruscant. Yeah.
Okay, because I think that's an important detail to have in there.
Yeah. Great. Any further questions?
What was sort of the climax of the movie then? That was the being surrounded by black hooded figures, and then it just does anybody overlook this and just because otherwise this secret just kind of dies with them right here.
Honestly, I think the real burn at the end of it would be that exposition, and then probably like, I don't know, maybe we could do a tracking shot of Palpatine going back to his office, and that's where maybe Mace Windu walks in to bring his Jedi to bring him to justice, and then it cuts to black.
Oh yeah.
So this is just supposed to be the fun of this is supposed to be that it weaves all through those those situations, showing that he's been doing stuff also on the Senate side, not just, you know, to the Jedi.
It does a couple of retcons too, because there's always been this what if, what if Anakin would have turned in Palpatine and helped Mace instead of, helped Palpatine kill Mace. And this kind of puts the what if to bed a little bit, because there were all of these things in motion anyway. So even if that march off to Palpatine's office with Mace Windu with the Force, even if that was going to happen a different way, it's like, kind of ship sailed, toothpaste is out of the tube, time to move.
Well, and the other thing too that I think is my idea with this is that the Empire, or Coruscant, the galaxy as it stands, the Republic, has already been kind of corrupted with like a cancer of sycophants that are riding off of the coattails of Palpatine, because they believe in the idea that the Sith, supporting the Sith, will almost through like a magical means bring them power, right? Like any cult believes, is that by supporting their cult leader, they'll get riches and power and whatever. And in turn they do, because when the Empire starts, they probably all get appointed to admiral positions or some, high ranking, and then they get to live lavish lives in whatever means, through, pledging their loyalty by killing whoever, right? So
yeah, and that jives with the dark side philosophy too, like where it's almost an easy way out, because you use your rage. It's almost like brute force use. The brute force, because you are using your rage, you're using power. You're like, when you're a hammer, every problem's a nail type thing, and you feel like that's the quickest way, instead of doing good down home politics and, well, gee, I need to serve my constituency. It kind of flips it on its head, where the dark side becomes a political tool, not just a spiritual tool behind it.
Yeah, the goal is for Palpatine essentially to be Francis Underwood in this so, yeah.
Well, I greenlighted. I want to see where this goes.
I had
Thanks, man.
one or two questions. So, does the ritual offer any additional benefit besides getting those senators out of the way and then sending a message to the other senators not to cross him? Or because it is like you're like I'm thinking about True Detective. We believe that there isn't really any darker power actually at work. It's really just people just being really messed up and doing messed up things. But in Star Wars, this ritual could maybe actually have some, maybe it could have some power, add some power. There could be some like actual magic happening.
Yeah, so I think in true lamoid form, I'm going to say that it would be something that would be pseudo-ambiguous, depending on your belief. So, if you want to believe that the Sith ritual would actually empower Palpatine more, like I could see like ritualistic killings causing the power of the deceased to go to Palpatine and making him stronger, right? Or on the other side, it could just make those people believe like, oh yeah, like the mystic mumbo jumbo of the dark side and our, Lord and Savior Palpatine. Like we need to believe that he's strong and powerful by doing these things.
Yeah.
So either way, whichever one's spookier and cooler.
It could even be it could be a ruse in a way to get the Jedi to be thinking that there is some kind of grandiose ritual happening, when really at the end of the day, it's not. That's not really the purpose, because there are, some people may not be familiar with like the Night Sisters in Star Wars. They use more like magical types of force powers, which is not seen in the movies, so it's a little bit interesting. My second question is like, with this, is there like a theme or a overall message that you would be coming back to? Like, because I feel like with The Social Network and Gone Girl, like I'm not sure if I could tell you what exactly the message is, but I feel like there's some like an undercurrent of just like some kind of core lesson that the different characters or the viewer are like learning. Is there anything that's like, are there any themes that you would be holding on to as important?
Great. Yes, I'd like to teach a lesson to people. So I think the lesson that I'd probably come apart from it is almost a darker version of the lesson that they teach in the original trilogy, which is that like evil only comes to power if it's not opposed, or evil comes to power with help, is the other way of saying it, right? So like Palpatine didn't get to his ranks without all on his own, as much as he'd like to think that he did. He had instruments, he had other people that he was able to manipulate and use that fell into his power. And these weren't necessarily people who were like dark lords of the Sith themselves that they could shoot lightning from their fingers. They were just greedy people who wanted to get more power themselves, right?
Yeah.
So the idea is that like only when idealistic people challenge that can you actually, face it down. And in the case too, to the unambiguous, the ambiguous morality of people, I always like challenging the idea of the Jedi being the good guys here, right? And this is an example of like the diplomatic, political warriors of the Jedi who are supposed to stand for good and fighting corruption, not actually doing it, right? Obviously, it's my choice to make them not do it. But I could see a situation where like there is something that seems like a street level crime, and then being like, listen, have the police take care of it. We have bit with things that we have to be like busy or taking care of.
There's a war going on.
Exactly. Yeah. So don't question the Republic, and stop peddling these ghost stories about the Sith. The Sith are dead, right? So
I like it. Yeah.
Thanks, man.
So Nick is giving a green light. Al, did you give your approval? What are you thinking?
I mean, this sounds awesome, and I love David Fincher, so I'm gonna go off-brand from the point I argued a couple weeks ago.
If we ever just completely say no to one, we just have to end the episode. It's like, well, anyway, that was Loose Cannon, guys. Pick us up on the Facebook. Give us a good review.
Surprised that Alex is not doing the. It has to be a theatrical cut of PG-13, but then we can have an uncensored director's cut on video release.
Which everyone loves.
That's not a bad idea. I didn't think of that. Yeah, on that note, Nick, there's a great podcast, Off Menu, which is Ed Gamble and James Acaster, and it's like a dream restaurant thing. But every episode they have a secret ingredient where if the person says that ingredient, they get kicked out and the episode ends right away. I don't think it's ever happened, but like every time I listen, I'm just hoping like usually it goes an hour long because they do a full meal. I'm just hoping when they're talking about the appetizer, someone says it and it's like, oh, it's over right now. So yes, I like that idea. If anyone, especially if we have guests in, if we give anything not a green light, we just end it and kick them off.
It's like the equivalent of having like the floor that falls out from underneath them and they plummet. Yeah.
But so far, I'm on board so far, but we still need to figure out dollars and cents and the cast and all that before I'm fully in.
Wonderful. Great. Cool. So with that, I guess I'll move towards some of the deets of, I think, what we could sell this more on. So
what are we going to sell this more on?
Yeah.
That's what that just sounded like.
Yeah. Selling these morons right now.
Yeah.
Anyways, so budget here, maybe I'm being a little bit too 90s in my thinking, but I feel like a cool 70 million would be a practical budget for this, considering most of this is just going to be like Senate hallways, nothing too crazy in terms of special effects. It's really like an old style movie in a lot of ways, with just detective style approaches and murder scenes. Fake blood doesn't cost a lot. So around the same budget as those mid 90s thrillers, I would say.
Well, do you guys know what the budget of The Social Network was?
I don't.
Like 120 mil.
I feel like we're about to hear it.
40 million.
Oh.
Do you know what the budget of Seven was?
15 million.
33 million.
Pretty close, guys.
It's all Brad Pitt right there.
Yeah. Let's do one more. What's the last one you guys want to know?
Fight Club.
Fight Club. I figured you would want to know that one, so I had ready that was 63 million.
Yeah, so this feels like it could be like a Fight Club level of production. I would say.
And inflation,
Also,
and Chris, you'll like this, but one of the last Clone Wars episodes I watched was the one with there was what's his face? Cad Bane takes the Senate hostage in the Senate chambers, and I loved how the Senate chambers looked. It's all kind of like this burgundy carpeted floor. It's like some hallways get really dark. It's all still Star Warsy, where the the doors open and shut like portals or whatever. And I'm picturing a lot of this movie taking place in there, except for in built sets or a little bit of rear projection.
Yeah, I mean the goal would be the main sets would be either the Senate or 1313, which would just be like gross, dingy, steam-ridden, kind of Blade Runner-like streets, essentially.
Yeah.
Or the Jedi Council and Jedi Temple. So not too varied, really.
Looking forward to seeing the Senate pods again.
Yeah. Oh, also one thing I forgot to mention in my earlier thing, the mission that Plo Koon's going off on is right before Order 66, so he'd be going off to die, so he wouldn't be coming back to help Tress and Dran.
Yeah,
so,
this
very
really
bleak, very
does
bleak.
butt right up into the end of Revenge of the Sith then.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So
I had a question about the fake blood. Have we ever seen blood in Star Wars?
Oh yeah,
I think you see some when Greedo's hand is or no, not Greedo. I'm sorry. When
Ponda Baba.
Dr. Death and Ponda Baba, their limbs are taken off.
You've got Finn, who gets blood on his helmet.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There seems to be a little bit more blood in the sequel trilogy, isn't there?
Wait, do we see any blood in Fincher movies?
Just cranberry juice.
Couple shots, couple 2-3 shots of that.
Yeah.
There's no blood in Social Network, is there?
I don't think so, actually. No.
Everybody's a pervert.
Mm-hmm.
So we got the stars now. Who's going to be in this movie?
I'm happy to take suggestions here, but generally, I think a lot of Fincher's great movies are, at least in the earlier days, were a lot of relative unknowns for the most part. He wouldn't stack them too much with people that were huge stars at the time. And if you look like Mindhunter, not really anybody new. So usually what he'll do with a lot of his movies, he'll take like one or two major stars and then generally let rising stars be around it. So the main characters, I think, would be that. You'd have Hayden Christensen pop up for his peripheral shots as Anakin. And I think Natalie Portman would be okay with showing up from time to time as Padme in this as well. We have Ian. Is it Ian McDermott? Is that his name for Palpatine? Yeah. And then I would like, because Fincher, you can't have Fincher without Brad Pitt. I want Brad Pitt to do the voice of Plo Koon.
Yeah, it's just one day in the studio.
Yeah, exactly. Especially with
so Plo Koon is CGI then?
Oh, it would be a guy with practical effects.
Like mocap.
But he'd be dubbed by Brad Pitt.
That's right. You never see his face move, so you don't have to. Yeah.
But you'd see him just doing a lot of this, like with his hand kind of thing, the typical Brad Pitt gestures.
Let us go mobile.
Yeah. We could do a little crossover too with the Christopher Nolan Star Wars movie I pitched, where Jake Gyllenhaal was the star. Get Gyllenhaal back in here somehow.
Fun fact: Jake Gyllenhaal hates David Fincher. So I don't know if he'd
really.
David Fincher.
What's the deets here?
David Fincher is notorious for doing like an absurd amount of takes, like almost the same level as Stanley Kubrick. And so when they were doing Zodiac, it was a very mundane scene that didn't really need that many takes, but he would do like 95 takes in a row to the point of just like breaking Jake Gyllenhaal. And so certain actors like it, certain actors don't. And Jake Gyllenhaal did not like it. So he doesn't ever want to do another movie with David Fincher again. And there's some rumors that if you guys have seen Spider-Man Far From Home, that he based his Mysterio character off of David Fincher.
So,
yeah.
Hey, what about Jesse Eisenberg as a drone? And by drone, I mean droid. Jesse Eisenberg as a droid.
He'd be a great protocol droid.
Yeah. Like, I would
Jesse
totally
Eisenberg
watch
as a
Eisenberg
drone.
as 3PO, but just like not even doing the voice, just painted gold walking around.
What's the thing he says where he's like, you have like a modicum of my attention. You have the bare minimum of it. Like he just like says that in the middle of like a Senate meeting. Just to some guy. Hey, could you give me a water? Yeah. I'm cool with that. If Jesse wants to, do it based off of profits or whatever it's called when they don't make money from actually doing it, but the returns they make money off of, that's cool.
I wouldn't mind Daniel Craig.
Any suggestions for other characters? Daniel Craig?
I wouldn't mind him as the guy that's snooping around, trying to get to the bottom of things.
As Dran or as Tress? Tress is a woman.
Dran. I think Dran. Okay. I wouldn't mind Daniel Craig as Dran.
Okay. Cool.
Well, and I mean, I know now we're just going to the same big actors, but Rooney Mara.
As a hard-boiled investigator.
You could do that. Yeah, you could.
We've seen it.
She could pull that off for sure.
I think I want Meatloaf in there somewhere.
Meatloaf would be a Jabba type character.
Well,
Jared
like he
Leto?
could be like he could be a senator that's also one of the cloaked figures at the end.
No, he'd be one of the opera singers. It's in the place that Palpatine always likes to go to.
It's your turn to cry.
He could be a good creepy senator too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think these are all good ideas. These are all characters or actors that can play dark characters in a movie film. I dig it. Cool.
Yeah.
He would do anything for a paycheck, but he won't do that.
So, obviously the other voice I had in mind for Plo before I hop over was Holt McElhaney. Now, I don't know if you know who that is, but if you guys have seen Mindhunter, have any of you guys seen Mindhunter?
I've seen a couple episodes.
So he's the gruff older guy of the detective pair. I feel like he could have a good voice for Plo Koon as well. So, anyways, he's also the guy that I think starts the his name is Robert Paulson in the chant after Meatloaf gets killed. So, yeah.
Members of Project Mayhem do have a name in death.
In death.
The space.
His
monkeys.
name was Robert Paulson. Seriously, guys, that was the 2000s Joker.
Now you guys are pointing out another thing that I didn't think about was like the cult aspect has a little bit of Project Mayhem going on too.
Yeah.
So it's like poetry, it rhymes.
And I would love, like, outside the Senate chamber, it's maybe right before Tress dies or whatever, Palpatine looks like, well, you've met me at a weird time in my life.
Well, Order 66, and then the Pixies start playing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Can't do that high of a thing.
That was almost as good as your Bill Simmons impression.
Hey, Sean Mackey's
I dig that.
fancy.
So next one, this is an obvious one. Composer for the soundtrack would be Trent Reznor. I would love for Trent Reznor doing like a sci-fi movie. How has he not done a sci-fi movie yet?
Well, he's done Watchmen.
Yeah, but that's like still not entirely sci-fi yet, right? I'm talking like space, full on space, like spaceships, lasers, all that good stuff. Be really cool to see his take on a gritty Star Wars movie.
If they ever rebooted 2001: A Space Odyssey, he'd be doing that right away.
Oh yeah, for sure. Any other suggestions, or is everybody on board with Trent? T-Rent.
Yeah.
T-Rez. Yep.
Great. Okay, so my ideas for the iconic scenes, again, this is like pretty helpful with the budget here. These would all be pretty, like, I don't want to say mundane things, but nothing too huge in scale, nothing in terms of like Marvel movies or anything like that. So we'd have a situation where like Tress is following around the woman being abducted in 1313, and she sees someone being taken away and chases one of the, potential senators through the streets to try and find him. Again, like echoing the vibes of Seven when they find John Doe and they start chasing him through the streets, that kind of thing. So, except in a seedy galactic underground 1313. The reveal of the senators as cultists, obviously that would be depicted a bit more dramatic than how I said it in the treatment, right? So, be a bit more of a reveal there. The heated argument with the Jedi Council, that would be a good moment. I mean, Fincher generally does a pretty good job of when people argue, having it be like a heated, cool scene to watch, titans of acting going at each other. So watching a pissed off detective screaming at the Jedi Council and them coming back at her and then her like spitting in their faces would be pretty cool, I think.
Sorry, I left my Prada robe at the cleaner.
Exactly, just like that.
Prada Jedi robe.
Yeah.
But if you think of the tension that's in like the social network between Zuckerberg and his friends and Gone Girl, obviously, like a lot of that movie is just conversations. Both of those movies.
Yeah,
but there's tons of tension.
So on that note, we haven't talked writer on any of these, but are you gonna have Sorkin write this?
I don't think Sorkin would touch this, to be honest. But
too many strong female characters.
Gillian Flynn would be pretty cool for it. She did Gone Girl with Fincher.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I would just love to see Sorkin writing this space dialogue as they're walking through the halls together, having these.
There's a lot of walk and talk.
There's a lot of, and this is galactic politics, so this actually could be a good dark version of the West Wing.
Coruscant West Wing.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean,
Oh my god, I want Coruscant West Wing so bad.
She Palpatine
Minus
is
the misogyny.
evil version of Martin Sheen president, so works out pretty well. So if we could get Sorkin, that would be great. But Gillian Flynn could also be pretty cool. For this.
If you had invented the Sith, then you would have invented the Sith. There's so much potential there.
Alex is a fan of The Social Network, as we can tell.
It's one of the only things I can quote. Though we haven't gotten to my favorite Fincher quote of all time. I don't know if it's the time for it. Maybe it is.
Well,
we can find a way to work this in. My favorite.
Are we just quoting?
Well, no, because I feel like this does lead to something that's going to be an iconic scene in this. My favorite quote from any Fincher movie is, well, I don't want to misquote it here. It's hard to believe that the fear of offending can be stronger than the fear of pain, but you know what? It is. And that's from The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. And I think there's great potential within this plot that Patrick's laid out to really delve into the different aspects of fear with like the political side of it, but then also the fear of death, just like Girl with the Dragon Tattoo does.
Cool. I can dig that.
Thanks.
I do think there's potential there for the idea of, you have a lot of figures here that are trying not to allow conspiracy or controversy regarding, respected institutions, whether it be the Jedi or, the Senate. But when it comes to 1313, they don't give a shit about what happens there, right? So it's this like kind of tension between who can be held accountable and who can't, who can be questioned and investigated and who can't, what's worth our time to protect and what's not. So, yeah, good point, Alex. Good point.
There is a very Star Warsy quote in 7, by the way, that I found.
Oh, the ending quote?
Which ending quote? What?
He says like, what is it? He says something like, the world's worth fighting for, or the world is an ugly place and it's worth fighting for, or something like that.
No, a little bit more direct. Here we go.
He's a nutbag. Because if the fucker's got a library card doesn't make him Yoda.
There we go. That's a good one. Yeah.
Oh, very literally a Star Wars.
It's very literally a Star Wars. Yeah.
Yeah. So we could actually move that. Plo Koon can say that. There we go.
Yep.
Brad Pitt
gets to say just because he has access to the Jedi archives doesn't make him Yoda.
Yeah. There we go. Yeah, I dig that. So then the last area here for me is another trademark of Fincher that hasn't really, it wasn't really in his earlier works, but afterward he did a great job with just doing kind of crazy, weird camera work via CG that you can't really tell if it's CG or a real camera. And you see it in Zodiac, you see it in Fight Club. I mean, the opening scene where you're going through a trash can for however long. You see it in Panic Room, all these different movies. So I think it'd be a pretty cool way for him to sneak that into some scenes where you wouldn't be thinking much about something, and then all of a sudden the camera would go through, a air duct or something, I don't know, to make it a lot more interesting and cool. That would otherwise be, again, like a mundane scene, but he does something really wild with the camera to spice it up. So those are my ideas for the cool iconic scenes. Theatrical or Disney Plus? I'm thinking this one's going to Hulu. I don't think they've put on Disney Plus.
Throwing everything at it,
yeah. So
well, I mean, if you're saying this is coming out in the year 2020, it's going to like Amazon Premiere, and it's going to be $20 for one viewing.
Yeah.
Though I kind of
has anybody done one of those
West Wing version, like show where it is a series?
Yeah, that's the thing though. Is I think that here's the thing that's tricky about this, right? Is it being realistic about what Disney would allow or wouldn't allow, or is it being like ambitious about what you want to see, right? Because I don't think that Disney would ever allow, like the most they would ever allow is maybe a movie and be like, all right, let it happen. But like to invest in like a 9-episode series of like really, really, really dark anti like Disney vibe stuff, I don't know if they would do that, man. So, but I think it could be really cool if it was done well, like definitely like a True Detective, House of Cards type show.
And this is no offense to your treatment at all, Patrick, because I think it's a lovely treatment and I really dig it, and
thanks.
And it works. But I think Disney would kind of have to be against the ropes to make this. And I say this because, and honestly, I'm off the heels of watching the behind the scenes Mandalorian stuff that's on Disney Plus, which I highly recommend. Dave Filoni is basically the new George Lucas, by the way. He is the purveyor of Star Wars. If you don't know already, like the way he talks about Star Wars, he talks with like such authority and gives you perspective. But like everything has to be hopeful. And that's like one of his rules is that everything has to give you some bit of hope. And I just don't think that Filoni thinks that this is a movie to be made.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. If our
money potential would have to outweigh that opinion.
I agree. This is a very ballsy thing for Disney to make, right? So I don't think they would make it anytime soon. But you could look at a movie like Seven and actually say at the end of it that it is somewhat of a hopeful movie because of the fact that, well, no, because you have Mills and Somerset, and in the end, Somerset, even though he was about to retire because he hates the world that he's living in and he wants to get away from this disgusting city. At the end of everything that happened with John Doe, he decides, you know what? No, I'm going to hold on to my badge. I'm going to go back to work and I'm going to keep fighting. So, like,
what's in the box?
There you go. He sees what's in the box and he's still like, all right, I'm not retiring. I'm going to go back to work. So, but
Fight Club definitely ends, hopefully.
Yeah,
that's a hopeful ending to Fight Club.
Yeah. Yeah. But it takes a certain type of movie to like, or person to see those movies and be like, that I feel good. So
I'll tell you what, I was more, I guess, disturbed and put off by the ending of Fight Club maybe when I was a teenager in 2000 or whenever I saw it than I am now. Like when I watched it at the end, I was like, cool, Project Mayhem should be a thing.
Erase the debt. Erase the debt. Yeah.
Do it.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, no, I never felt embarrassed about liking Fight Club. I've been aware of like the parody or the ridiculousness of like, of course you like Fight Club. That's how you got introduced to, philosophy, right? But I still love it. I still think it's great. So,
did you know that we haven't talked about Chuck Palahniuk much, which obviously that's just the one Fincher movie. But did you know he will write you back and send you tchotchkes if you write Chuck Palahniuk?
Oh, nice.
So I had a friend in college that was a huge Chuck fan, like read everything, wrote him books or wrote him letters or whatever. And like he sent back a care package with like stuff that he'd found and like a new like other like signed copies of books, obviously, but like also just he like made a diorama for him. It's like, hey, I just found these things and made me think of you and thought this was like a cool story that you told me, because he was like engaged enough by the letter that it's like he was showing me all the stuff that Chuck Palahniuk could send him back. I'm like, oh my god,
what a nice man.
Wait, he sent him Zachary Levi stuff?
What?
You said he was a big Chuck fan.
Oh God! Shut up.
All right, moving on. Yes.
Yes.
Fan service. Trinkets.
Trinkets.
Perfect timing.
Chuck Palahniuk. Fan service. Anakin Palpatine in the background. Generally, it's just stuff for the fans to be like, look, like a lot of this movie is just for everyone to be like, oh, it's all happening in the background. Everything that we know, it's happening right now. Blah blah blah. Like no one else knows, but this is Order 66 coming together. So a lot of the fan service would be a bit more understated, but still pretty fun for people to see happening. So there's that part. And then also, subtle nods towards familiar figures and events in Star Wars lore. So again, just seeing Palpatine, you're getting to see a little bit more of his influence on Anakin, aside from those one or two meetings in Revenge of the Sith. You're seeing more and more of how frequently he's being groomed by Palpatine. And how commonly he's in the presence of him, seeing people coming and going, things like that. And then also iconic, places from the perspective of normal citizens. So there haven't been really movies that focus on exploring the Star Wars universe from the level of a normal person. I mean, you see a little bit of it in Rogue One, but they don't really go to any familiar places in Rogue One that you see in the other movies. So this would be one of the first ones where you really see just a normal citizen walking around Coruscant, walking by the Jedi Temple in a way where you kind of look at it the same way that you look at like Union Station or something, right? So there's that. And then, I think a lot of people would think the fear of the Sith and the strange concept of the Jedi and the Sith from a normal person's perspective would be kind of cool. How do people think about these cults, these figures, these belief systems? Do people ever question like, why are the Jedi in power? What are they actually doing? Like, I feel like people would actually look at the Jedi like the Scientologists or something, where they have this like big wild building where people just disappear and you never see them again. So I think that would be kind of cool, as well as just the idea of the Sith basically being the boogeyman of the galaxy. Looking at through the different shade where it's a lot more intimidating or a lot just more strange. to a normal person. So those things I think would be pretty neato if you ask me. So that's all my little treatment here based off of what we've done previously. But if there's any other questions or anything you guys want to push on or add here, more than happy to navigate that. Or if Alex wants to give more social network quotes, that's also cool.
I don't think that everyone who comes up with everyone who makes a good Star Wars movie has to give money to the original maker of a Star Wars movie. So that is kind of how it works.
Okay.
So with the different violence and the killings that are happening, the idea is that we don't know if it's people aren't going to look at that in the general public and think Sith. They're going to think Jedi. Is it Sith? Like, what's going on here? Like, right? They're kind of like there could be conspiracy theories. People saying, "Oh, it was the Jedi that did it," or is it pretty clear to people, or like what? Or is it like could you? I wasn't sure about that part, but it is interesting. I think like something to explore, like how the perception of it is.
Yeah, so I mean, like it would just be kind of seen, I think, from the same perspective as like a normal person, where it's like cryptic text carved into someone's face. A lot of people would just be like, "What the hell is this? Was this like an alien hate crime, or this is some like Greedo species language, or is this like what is this?"
Yeah.
And then over time, whispers of like, "Oh, this is an ancient text." The more and more they probe, the more and more there's like an understanding. And again, it's kind of like the blend over into Seven, where it's inspired by the works of Dante's Inferno and the seven deadly sins of like the ancient text of the Bible. This instead is through ancient texts of the galaxy of the Sith. So,
which kind of, you bring up a fun point. If there was ever a Coruscant police type drama, is all of the crimes happening and the police force determining if it is actually a crime or if it is a cultural thing amongst aliens.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, they carved something into his forehead. Is that weird, or does that always happen? And then they have to get like a protocol droid to come scan it. It's like, yeah, no, that's a crime.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing too is that there's obviously the contrast between what they're paying attention to and what they're not. Like, they're not paying attention to the woman disappearing in 1313 because that's kind of just a place where you let the people eat each other, kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
But the second that things get involved with the fact that it's senators being killed, then that's a moment where it's like, all right, I guess we have to look into this because these are the rich people. So and that's part of it too, is like people wouldn't really notice or know about these murders if it wasn't the fact that it's these influential people that are being reported about in the media. So
yeah, and like a lot of I don't know if you guys have ever seen The Wire, but if it's a bunch of people that have died in a certain area within a certain amount of time, whatever, people are dying, crimes are happening. But then if you start to build connections between them, if you start to see patterns, then the word serial killer gets brought up, and then all of a sudden the whole media is intensely interested, and the public is extremely, fired up about it.
Yeah. Be a spooky time.
Indeed.
Cool. So how much, if we're saying like 60 billion, how much do we think this movie's going to make? I couldn't find actually reliable info on the box office results of Fincher movies.
Well, to start, I said 70 million, not 60 billion, but...
no, what? Sorry. Billion. If we're going to do it... really going big on the budget here. Hey.
I'm glad you're about to write me that check, Alex. I'm glad you like it that much.
I'll tell you, Patrick. 60 million isn't cool. 60 billion is cool.
Oh, no. Why?
Unintentional to get us there. But yeah, I couldn't find a lot of info on how much Fincher movie makes. This could be a lower grossing Star Wars movie, I feel like, just partially due to the subject matter and rating.
I think a lot of his movies like break even or close to it a lot of the time. Like, they're not failures, but they're just kind of underwhelming. But usually on DVD and upon release, they do really well. Like Fight Club was actually a really good example of that. And then I think the only movies that he's done that have actually done really, really well are The Social Network and Gone Girl. The rest usually just do like kind of decent. I think like Benjamin Button did okay too. But
and I think that's the first time we've referenced Benjamin Button all episode.
Yeah, that's enough. But Unless we want Tilda Swinton to play a character in this too, but.
And yeah, I heard that, Nick.
Yeah. So that's the kind of ROI we're looking for here. But we're not focused on profit. We're focused on artistic productions.
Yes.
Thought-provoking, cynical art.
We'll take a paycheck though.
Thank you. Yeah, that's good too.
Yeah.
We'll put Pepsi products in the movie.
Oh yeah. What we didn't talk about Galaxy's Edge tie-in.
Oh, yeah.
I feel like around like October they would do like a spooky Galaxy of Fear that can involve the cult of Sheev. Do that. Do a haunted house with Sheev's Black Robe Boys.
Black Robe Boys.
The Black Robe Boys.
That's going to be a new Disneyland gang.
Yep.
Well, listeners, you met us at a weird time in our lives.
If only we had the Pixies queued up to play, that would be great. It would be a great moment. Dang it.
And I think the real moral with this episode is when you're coming up with a Star Wars movie, you can either catch a lot of fish or you can catch a big fish.
With your feet on the air, your head on the ground.
What?
Yeah.
I was really trying to think of a quote from like Seven of Brad Pitt screaming at John Doe like "fuck you," but I couldn't in that moment. So you're lying, you're a fucking liar. But anyways, I'm glad you guys listened to my little ranting of David Fincher and the dark stuff I had to come up with to justify it in the Star Wars universe. And I hope that the mood music of Trent, served it well as well. So, thanks.
Yeah. So we're basically out of the original directors we brought up. So listeners, if you have any directors you want us to do one of these episodes for, let us know. And one of us will take it on. I think we've done a lot of the really stylistic big name directors, but there's certainly still some good ones out there. So
I got one more in the works.
Okay, next got one more in the works. I also have one I'm nibbling on a little bit, but he doesn't have quite the movie pedigree of these others. But we'll see where those go. Still, we can always use your suggestions. As always, get at us on the social medias, Star Wars LC on everything.
Yeah, let us know what you thought about the David Fincher times, and recommend some new directors for us. The wackier the better, because that makes the episodes a little bit stranger as well. So
yeah, get Fincher with it. By the way, I think is every director we've covered have a new movie this year other than Coen Brothers? Fincher has a movie with Gary Oldman that's supposed to come out this fall. We've got Tenet from Chris Nolan, and then we have The French Dispatch too from Wes Anderson.
Wow,
I'm seeing a pattern here.
Buster Scruggs was a little too early for us,
so I guess the last question we need to talk about before
the Coen Brothers started a movie this year, but it wouldn't come out this year though.
Before we totally wrap this up, longtime listeners know that Chris has been a relatively new addition to the podcast. Nick, when Chris was added, what were your shares diluted down to?
Are we? Oh, I thought I was going to say, are we doing his annual review live on air right now?
What were your shares?
His probation period is coming up. Our shares of negative like $200 from our podcast fees are now split 4 ways. So I'm all about it.
Mine was diluted down to 0.03%.
Okay.
I didn't know we were an LLC.
Is this the part where you would tell me if I invented the Star Wars LC, I would have invented it? Like, is that what we're getting to?
I just want to go watch The Social Network again.
I still have little mini fantasies that all of a sudden our Patreon takes off and I have to start an LLC. and that like I pass the papers around, we have a big fight about it.
No.
Our lawyers all start screaming at each other.
So I feel like I could always edit our ending, but we did have some people in the chat and Twitch that were hanging out like for a while. So just wanted to say thanks, guys.
Yeah, and it was brought up. I don't know if
we had some questions
Fergalok is still in, but yeah, we don't have to include this in the episode. But just for talking now about whether Joaquin Phoenix is a prime candidate for a Star Wars movie, hell yeah. And I feel like a Paul Thomas Anderson pitch at some point could have him in there.
Oh yeah,
be down for that.
But yes, I think Joaquin Phoenix would be great in any movie franchise.
Yeah.
Also,
I don't know if anyone has anything more to add on
about Joaquin Phoenix.
Yeah.
I've never heard any trouble with actors in Star Wars as much as I have with directors.
Correct.
So that's also one of my things with this series that we've had is it seems like directors, we were sold on the idea that awesome directors would get a lot of leeway and create some interesting stories. But I don't know if this is really true or not. It's just my perception that really the Kathleen Kennedy and Lucasfilm reins in the directors to kind of toe the line and be more showrunners. I think, Patrick, you brought that up, that Star Wars directors become more like showrunners than like for a TV series, rather than actually being directors with autonomy that they would have in a non-franchise.
So on that note, I mean, a fun fact is maybe not fun because it's kind of depressing. Apparently, Christopher Nolan,
you're JJ.
Christopher Nolan and David Fincher were supposedly like approached when Disney acquired Lucasfilm about making films, and I think Fincher just said like he couldn't really think of anything interesting to do, and I think Christopher Nolan was like no. But Christopher Nolan's a big fan of Star Wars, at least the original trilogy. But yeah, they were thought of as potential filmmakers for the movies at one point. So
that's cool.
Anna Lee, I would definitely watch The Jedi Wears Prada. That's a brilliant idea.
Be down.
Awesome. Well, I think that kind of summarizes a lot of the feedback from the chat, but just wanted to shout out to those guys.
And the YouTube chat, no, Ye Young, I will not be shaving my glorious mustache. But thanks for the suggestion.
Yeah. Well, cool, guys. Let's go ahead and wrap it up there. Thanks for watching. Thanks for getting Finchy with us. Like, subscribe, hit the comment button, and Patreon. And, be well and have a great weekend and be good to your friends. Thanks. Bye.
All right, guys. Have a good night. Thanks for tuning in.